So this is the lace for the next pattern that I'm going to show you on a video. And as always on my patterns, there's a new feature. So there are a couple of things that we've not done. So we've not done a fan like this before. This is known as a coronet fan, and although it's nice and simple, it is a bit difficult to control to get the tension in right and the purrs to look right. It's worked in cloth stitch and twist, which is always more difficult to tension, but that getting that curve to work can be difficult. So that's the first thing that we've got on there, a coronet fan, and I'll show you the working diagram and talk you through stuff in a bit more detail shortly. We've then got a trail, and we've done trails before, so not a problem getting wider as a cloth block. But then what we've got is this trail separates and divides into two separate trails. Now, on this piece, I've used a variegated thread as my main colour. A bit difficult to see here, but my outer passive on my fan is a darker colour. And then I've actually started the top of the fan off with two slightly darker purple colours, which means that when I come to split the trail, divide it into two, I've actually got the same colour for both sides, so a slightly darker colour. So that's not an optical illusion, it is intended to be like that. Okay, so trail divides, trail comes back together, and the trail here joins into one. So dividing a trail, joining trails together. We've also got in here, this is a new ground. This is triangle ground. So it's sort of got three parts to it and three pins to each repeat. So I'll talk you through that. It's not obvious here, but I do have a new ground here. So the ground here is half stitch, pin, half stitch, and an extra twist. So it doesn't look as quite as open and almost as flowery almost as the other ground, where you do see the crosses. The holes feel a bit smaller here, and between feels a bit tighter. I've also got in them something that I've not done, but I sort of have done, and that is a half stitch block. So we've got cloth stitch blocks and half stitch blocks. In terms of the pattern itself, a half stitch block against a half stitch pin, half stitch ground isn't the best contrast, but what I wanted here was to be able to take my workers out and straight back in. And if I'd had that as a half stitch block, it wouldn't have behaved as I wanted to. The worker would have split. So that's why I've done it all the way around. If you wanted to, you could do all of these in cloth stitch rather than the outer ones in half stitch. But this gives you a new technique or a slightly different technique. So that's why it's there. Two pairs cloth stitch through in the footside passive. There is also a slightly different corner on the coronet fan. You see, once this comes out of the edge, there's no connection with the rest of the work across, unlike the fir tree fan that we did. That's quite small and it doesn't need it, but on a corner we do need that extra bit. So that's lace number one. So when I do these videos for my in-person students, I'm also doing written instructions to go alongside the video, which means I have to work the pieces twice. So this one, I've actually changed it a bit when I've come to work it again for that. So let me show you version 2. So this is version 2 of the lace. Exactly the same pattern, except previously I had a rectangular with 3 blocks on the top, and I had 5 blocks down the side. This time I've got a square one and 3 sets of blocks on each side. So the pattern that comes with this piece of lace does have both versions in it. Obviously, you could make them both bigger if you wanted to. There's flexibility within the patterns to cut sections out of them to be able to do that. When I worked this one, the square, I pricked the whole pattern. I didn't prick the whole pattern for the rectangle, as I'll explain later on. So let me show you the pricking. So as you've seen from the lace, there are two different versions of this pattern, although it is the same, it's just the size of it that's different. So this one has the 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 by 3, 1, 2, 3. And this one is 1, 2, 3 by 1, 2, 3. So that one's the square. So let me just work on the bigger one and I'll zoom into view to see a repeat better. Okay, so when I start this on my pillow, I will actually start off at this point. I don't like starting off at corners because I think your eye is drawn to a corner. So I always try and start off in the middle of a piece of lace. There's a really nice diagonal there. Most of your pairs, if you start there, will sew into the cloth area, which is nice and easy, much easier to get rid of. There's only going to be one pin that you don't. So in terms of our pattern markings, when we've got a trail that divides, what you often see on the pattern where you've got the weaving lines is that you see one line come down, and that line is the line that will become our second worker. So you can see both of the pairs from the top, one that constantly weaves backwards and forwards, and the one that comes down, are ultimately used as workers. Similarly, when they come together, one goes straight down. So weaving those is something that we've seen before. The coronet fan is slightly unusual. We're used to our fan worker starting at the outside pin. It doesn't here. It actually comes in at this pin here, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So fifth pin along and 4 passes to go in it, although you can't see those just yet. So that's our worker, and it is all worked in cloth stitch and twist, which is why it's red on the working diagram. Cloth block, which you've seen before, cloth block, which you've seen before, 2 half stitch blocks. And in this pattern, I've chosen to start all of my diamond shapes working to the left. I could have chosen to work to the right, but I've kept them consistent and all working to the left. Oh, our line for our footside passes. So let me take you to the working diagram. So here's the working diagram. So starting where we will start at the top on the cloth block gives us a nice easy thing to sew into at the end of a pattern, and a start and finish are about, we think about making an easy start, but actually it's an easy finish that is more important than an easy start, and it's being able to disguise as much as you can the joining that you make. There's all sorts of places where I could have joined this if you look along diagonal lines, but so much easier if you can just sew into cloth, or if necessary into half stitch. So next in the center we've got this triangle ground, and I talked on the lace about 3 pins, 1, 2, 3, and you can see it effectively does a triangle. We'll look at this one in more detail when we come to work that section of the lace. One thing I will say is that generally the twists aren't shown on the working diagrams that I do, but in the triangle ground I have shown them, because the twists aren't quite where you'd normally expect them. You'd normally expect a twist twice at the end of a row, so to speak, but there isn't a twist there. There's no twists at those pins. So just to clarify where those twists are, but I will talk about that in more detail when we come to that section of the pattern. So I've just spoken about the Coronet fan, all being in cloth stitch and twist, which is a red stitch. So we don't often see the red stitches. We did see it in the Spanish or fir tree fan pattern, but this time the worker starts off here at the fifth pin because I've got 4 passives. So not at the edge here, and works backwards and forwards, and then comes in again at the 5th pin. So yeah, it's just making sure that you get that curve on the passives. Cloth stitch block, exactly the same as we've done before, but this time everything is starting by going to the left. Another cloth block. And then we've got 2 half stitch blocks. So nothing fancy about those, they are just all half stitch. You'll see on the working diagram that actually there isn't much contrast between the ground stitch there and the block there, and there isn't a lot between the lace, as I've just talked about. Would have made much more sense in many ways to put that half stitch block there as contrast, but then that purr that will still look like a line wouldn't travel through correctly. Similarly, if I put it there, and again, if we'd done half stitch next to the open cloth and twist, we wouldn't have had a particularly strong contrast. So done for a reason to include those, but if you wanted to work them as cloth stitch, you could. So the ground stitch, as I've said, is slightly different, and it's half stitch, pin, half stitch, and then you put an extra twist. So all of these have actually got an extra line on them. One thing to say here is that where your ground has 2 twists on it, and we've not met a 2 twisted ground before, any pairs that come into the ground from other features should have the number of twists on that match. So coming in, these should all have 2 twists on them. Similarly at the edges, anything coming into the ground should have 2 twists on it. This one's got 2 footside passives and a proper footside edge on it. This pinhole here is the only ground pin as such that we're going to have to sew into. Obviously we will have to sew into the 2 passives and the edge there. So just to mention, there is a separate working diagram for just the corner, and it's basically the same as what we've been doing, except for this one point here where we need to attach the blocks to the fan to give a bit more stability to the work. So that's why that working diagram is slightly differently. There is a bit of a challenge when you come back here. You might not even notice that it's a challenge, but the worker and the passives are actually different. Those two don't mirror itself. It took me about an hour to play back with the working diagram until I actually got this to look and feel right at this point. I tried going the other direction and all sorts. So the worker for this fan actually comes out there, and that one was a passive, but the worker from this fan actually becomes the worker for the cloth stitch block. So you can get a bit, that one does want to pull initially away, but you won't see that. It's a minute change. So this is my full pricking, but you can see there's a lot of repetition on this pricking. So the corner is the same on each of them, top and bottom have the same sides to them, same sides that way. So whereas I could go and prick all of this, actually, particularly if I'm using a block pillow, there's no need for me to do that. What I could do is prick a side, prick a corner, and prick a bigger side. Okay, and that's what I chose to do when I'm working this. So let me just swap my patterns over, and you'll see the markings that I've put as to where I want my cut lines. Okay, so what I worked out is that if I cut there and there, I'd have a 1 repeat, and that seemed like a sensible section to do. I've got quite a decent corner, and then separately I've got a 1, 2, 3 repeat step. Doesn't make sense to just do 2 really and play about with that one at the same time, although you could do that. So my prickings are just 3 pieces: a small piece, a corner, and a piece of 3 repeats. So the next thing that we need to look at is where we're actually, if we've got a block pillow, where we're actually going to place that. So I've played about with a number of different things here. So I'm still going to use the big one to just to show this to you. So I could place it like this, but the problem then would be that my corner, which is here, is across blocks, because my block goes that way, and then there's another section there. Doesn't matter at the moment that I'm using a 9 block with fixed points in the corner. It's the principle of using the blocks that's the important thing. So actually, I think I would be better just doing it over 2 blocks. Ignore my half blocks for now. So the way that I've chosen to place my my pricking on my dots is to have a corner totally within that block, a piece that straddles and a piece that straddles. But I can see all my corners, when I move the corner pieces around, will appear within there. I've also chosen to centralize mine. So I've used the line, the block line that's through the center, to be roughly in line with that middle piece, middle section of that side. And I've also used that block line through there as roughly the middle piece. So I need to put my actual prickings in a similar position to those. At the moment, let's only consider the up and down the pillow in terms of the position of the block. So ideally we want those the 2 top sections on complete blocks, no half blocks or anything like that in between. So my pillow is set up with 2 blocks there. My half blocks I'll move about as I need to. So I'm now going to place my pricking in roughly those positions, and when you come back you will see where I would use my prickings. I will place this section on the pillow, but I accept that I might need to move the pins that are going to be on this block to start off with. Mine has 5 movable blocks, so the sides, the corners are fixed. You may have a block pillow that's just top to bottom. Same principle will apply. It's just a bit easier to see in terms of layout of where I'm going to fit on the blocks with this. So let me put my prickings on the pillow, and then I'll come back to show you where I am. So this is me now with my pillow set up with where I think the blocks and the pricking sections need to go. There's enough space there to fit up there, and then there's enough space there to be able to fit that. However, I'm actually going to start off with that top section, and that's a bit too high up the pillow. So this is where my half blocks are going to come in. So I'm going to undo that piece of pricking there, just the 2 there, and I'm going to push my block down and put that half block in there. So that means that that section is now a little bit easier for me to work on in terms of that section of the pattern. And as I go further, I can move my blocks around. And provided that corner is always on a block, and we make sure when we turn it around, either by turning our pillow that way or by physically taking the block out and turning it around, that the next pattern section doesn't do what mine is doing at the moment, where it's crossing a half of a block. We need it to be onto a full block, or at least a half block, like that. We've not played the half blocks in terms of the setting up, because that does limit where we can move things to. So I'm now ready to start my lace. So the next time you see my pillow, I'll have the working diagram on screen and be ready to start setting up the bobbins. So as you saw from my lace has a coloured worker in this block, and this is a cloth block, albeit it does something strange at that point. But I've maintained a coloured worker throughout, and what we have here is we have a passive that suddenly becomes a worker. So that means that at the top I need to start off with two coloured pairs that can be my workers. Oh, I've chosen to do them in colour. Yours don't have to be in colour if you don't want them to be. You could do this all in white. So I'm going to put a pin in the top pinhole. As you know, I don't normally use pinholes that are already in the lace, but I am going to on this one. Okay, so I've got my two bobbins on, they're open rainbow style, and you can see from the threads there's quite a lot on these bobbins, and that may not actually get me all the way around. I may need to add more of this thread on. So I'm going to also add some passive pairs on, and my passives are actually a variegated purple. So these, except for the last one, are all going to be in the variegated one, and that is going to be in a darker colour to match my worker. I'm not going to add them all at once, but I do need some on to get myself going. Over this side, it's different. That's a normal coloured passive. So we're going to start off by working this diamond, which has, it's a diamond with a hole in it. So it's got a second worker being created. The trail splits at the bottom. The trail comes together. And then we've got something going on in the middle. So I've started off with the two pairs at the top. I'm going to put two twists between them, and then I'm going to add a couple of pairs of pins on each side, and I'm not going to use the actual lace to add those pins on either side in. So let's just get 3 to start me off on either side. I don't like putting too many on at once. Let me just check. Will 3 get me to the middle? 1, 2, 3. No, so I'm going to do 4 on each side. So I'm going to hang those 4 on off camera, and then I'll come back and do that working on camera. Okay, so I have 4 on each side. My worker starts off by going to the left. So cloth stitch the centre pairs. The trail is in cloth stitch. We have got some half stitch little diamonds in this pattern too. So as it gets wider at each pin, I'm going to take in 1 pair, just using cloth stitch. Twist twice. Remember, twists aren't shown necessarily on the pricking. I have on the working diagram I have sewn some. So I'm going to come back it's getting wider on the right hand side. So that means I need to take another pair in, twist twice, put the pin between, just as the working diagram is showing me. Okay, so I'm going to leave those in temporary pins in just for a bit. So I'm coming back to the left hand side. My work is getting wider, so I need to take in one more pair. Twist twice, put the pin in. And go back to the right hand side again in cloth stitch. 1, 2. It's getting wider. That means when I get to the end, I need to take one more pair in. Pin up the worker. Okay, so back to the other side. The shape is still getting wider, so when I get to the left hand side, I need to pull in another pair. Work a twist twice, and I put the pin in. Okay, then come back to the right hand side. Because I'm using a variegated, the cloth will look sometimes a bit strange in terms of what I'm doing. So you can see it's gone a bit lighter at that point, just because I've hit a lighter bit in the variegated. But my worker is a solid colour, and I've got a solid colour in the middle. So I've got bigger, take another pair in, twist twice. And put a pin in. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the side. You will find you're going to have to lengthen your workers as you go. Getting wider on the left, so I've taken another pair. And put the pin in. Yes. Okay. So what we now need to do is we now need to go halfway. So we've added in 1, 2, 3, 4. And this time we're going to work back through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is actually going to be our, for me, is going to be my other coloured worker and stop. So through 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And yes, I have hit the other coloured worker. So what I'm now going to do is put a pin in between them. I'm going to twist the one that was the worker twice. Put the pin in. And then going to cloth. And what these two pairs are now going to do is they are individually going to become workers for their respective sides. So if I take this one, I've still got one hanging on as a passive on a temporary pin. So let me go back. It's getting wider on the right hand side, so I take another pair in. 1, 2, put the pin in and start coming back. Now it is getting narrower on this right hand side, but if you think about leaving, sorry, the left hand side of this trail, if you think about leaving a pair out, you've left that one out, the one that's going to become the worker. So there's nothing needs to hang from there. So let me twist twice and put the pin in. Okay, so the other thing that I'm now going to do at this point is I'm going to take some of the pins that are here hanging in out. I'm going to take that one out and gently ease it down. I don't want to do it too soon because I don't want to pull them too tight. So leave 2 in on each side. And I'm going to do the same over this side. It's that one, which is there, and the next one. So you can see I'm being very, very gentle and very, very careful as I'm pulling those down. So what now happens is you are going to work in the same pattern down both sides, and you're going to stop on the outside on each one. Just on the outside, remember I said we were going to use a different colour there. So I'm going to do that off camera, and when I come back I will talk you through working the triangle ground in the centre. So I've now finished both halves of that trail, and in both cases got to the point of the trail, the zigzag, the chevron, and the block, whatever you want to call it. Remember that I said the outside passive would have a different colour on it. I mean, it has, and that colour matches the worker, just to give the work a little bit of interest. So what I've done is my bobbins that are not going to be used for the centre, so that I need 8 pairs for the centre, 4 from each side. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. What I've done is I've put them on stitch holders, and I'm going to put them out of the way. That's one bobbin just coming off. This side I'm going to put them well out of the way. Normally I wouldn't put them that far back on my pillow, and I know you can't see them off my pillow, but what I want to do is to still be able to see the working diagram. So the next part of the work is this diamond of what is 4 triangle ground stitches. So triangle ground is made up of 4 pairs between 3 pins. It is not a symmetrical ground, and it does do some things that we've not seen before. So we might expect a twist, we won't see twists. Unusually on this, I have deliberately shown you all the twists on the ground for the first repeat of this. So everything coming in needs 1 twist. So let's check. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, but we're only going to work with 4 pairs at once. So I'm going to take the 4 middle pairs. Okay, so the 3 pins are 1, 2, 3. The first pin is unusual because it is worked as cloth stitch, pin between, no twists, not covered. So let me do that to start off with. Cloth stitch, pin between, no covers, no twists. So my little mini worker for my triangle ground actually comes as the pair that's on the right, and it works through 3 pairs, having been twisted itself, in cloth stitch 1, 2, 3. Now we're used to, whenever we come back, we put 2 twists on. This does not get twisted at all. So let me work that. So we've got 1, 2, 3 in cloth, no twists, and it's hard to stop yourself doing that. Put the pin in, and then you work back through those same 3. So 1, 2, 3, and twist. 1, 2, 3, and twist the worker. Okay, so the one that's on the left just gets twisted, and we'll travel to the next block of 4. The 2 that are left in the middle, pin between them, and then cloth stitch them with then putting a twist on them. So pin between, cloth stitch, and a twist. Now what you could have done there on the working diagram is that could have been shown as a red stitch. It's just easier to do them all the same. So that's our block of 4 complete. So next block of 4 is diagonally below here. So centre pairs, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Centre pairs cloth stitch with a pin between them. With a pin between them, no twist, no cover. Okay, so then the right hand pair comes through 1, 2, 3. It already comes in with a twist on it. 1, 2, 3. There are no twists at the end. Put the pin in. And then we come back through 3. 1, 2, 3, and twist the worker. 1, 2, 3. Okay, the one on the right, the one on the left gets twisted. The ones in the middle have a pin between them and then work cloth stitch with an extra twist. Stitch with a twist. Okay, so that's our first 2 done. I'm going to work the next 2 but not talk to them.
I'm just following what the working diagram is telling me to do.
So that is our 4 little sections of triangle ground complete. So the next thing we need to do is to work these 2 sections to the middle point. Okay, so that is just a trail that we've done before. So I'll get the pairs to that middle point off camera and then I'll talk to you about the joining. So I've worked the sides and now I've got my 2 workers together in the middle. So I'm going to put that side on stitch holders well out the way, just so that you can see my working diagram, and the other side out the way. So anything that's already been left out of the trail is now on a stitch holder. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the one that's this side as effectively as my ongoing worker. So when I've cloth stitched them together, that will be the one that I twist and put the pin between them and then take this out to the right hand side in cloth stitch, and just as we've worked before. Pin in. And that then I can work backwards and forwards, leaving one out through right to the end, where obviously we end up with 2. So I'm going to get to that point off camera and then talk you through the bit that we're going to do next, which is the fan. So the next section I'm going to work is the fan. And the fan's not like any fan that we've seen before. Yes, it curves, but it has a constant number of passes when we look at it, which is 1, 2, 3, 4. The other thing that's odd about it is that the worker actually comes from that pin there. Not all the others we've done, the worker started at the top. So it's also worked wholly in cloth stitch and twist. So the only thing that we need to, well, there's 2 things we need to watch. We need to try, and once we've got the pairs in, keep them well spaced out. And we also need to watch that it doesn't buckle along this side. What I forgot to say is this is a Coronet fan. Always worked in cloth and twist. Sometimes you see that inner one, if there's too many twists, if they're too close together, worked in cloth stitch. So it will be cloth stitch and twist, obviously with the extra twist at the edges. So my worker is my fifth pair in, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is going to be my worker for my fan, and that's why I couldn't have a coloured or an accent coloured worker. So everything should have one twist on it to start off with, because our fan has one twist on it. So my worker is pair 5, which goes through 4 pairs in cloth and twist. 1, 2, 3, 4, extra twist. Put the pin in. Okay, and then we're pulling out for now. We're pulling out to the sides, roughly in the way that we want the pairs to ultimately lie. So cloth stitch and twist, cloth stitch and twist, trying to spread it, cloth stitch and twist, cloth and twist, extra twist, pin in. Okay, so this inner pin will be the one that's quite tight, but that's fine. So let's come back. So 1, 2, 3, 4, extra twist. Before I go any further, what I'm going to do is I'm going to release that temporary pin that I had left there, and it's fine to leave it until that point, but this stitch is quite hard to pull back on, so leaving it any further would have been difficult to pull back. So 1, 2, 3, 4. It's looking all right in terms of spacing, so let me carry on. Cloth stitch and twist, cloth and twist, cloth and twist. Give it an extra tension as I'm going along. Cloth and twist. Pin. So let's check. Yes, I did put the extra on there. Let's just check. Yeah, that is laying okay. It's not laying too tight. So cloth and twist. 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 Now, you will find that your worker will potentially remain the same pair throughout. So you may need to lengthen it. If you lengthen it before you get to the fan, the cloth and twist, because it will show more in this open stitch than it will in a cloth stitch. You can see on that row, at the moment they've all sat quite well. So put my hand on it after I put the pin and tension, and they stay where they were. So carry on. Cloth and twist, cloth and twist, cloth and twist, extra twist, pin in. So again, I need to tension, but let's hold them in place while I tension. So all I'm doing there, you can't because you can't see it, is I'm literally just putting my hand over the bobbins. Twist twice. Pin in. So I'm just going to zoom out. Okay, so I'm going to tension and I'm going to hold my hand over those and gently pull that. You can see they didn't move at all. So let me zoom back in. Okay, so I'm going to carry on with my fan. If you are doing this fan, it's quite an open fan. You need to make sure in terms of design, ideally that it's against something a bit more solid, which it is in this pattern, being against a cloth area there and then a cloth area below it. So pinning. And I'm keeping my passives roughly in the direction that I want them to go in, so that when I tension at the end of the row, they stay. I can just put my hand over the bobbins like I did the last time and tension, and they should stay. Okay, and then come back. Put the pin in. And in terms of the worker, the fan worker, it doesn't finish at that pin. It actually works back through all four in cloth and twist. 1, 2, 3, 4 in cloth and twist and stop. And that will become into the point of the diamond that comes next. Okay, so that is our fan complete. We'll straighten it out perfectly when we come to do the next area. So let me just move my working diagram up slightly. So the next section of the pattern is a cloth stitch diamond. You've worked cloth stitch diamonds in previous videos, so I'm not going to cover working that at all in the video, other than to say when you're traveling from one cloth area or one area to another, you always need at least one twist on. So these all need twisting once. You'd put 2 on if the ground, that if it was going to ground and it felt that it needed 2, or the ground was a 2 twist. So let me work the diamond off camera, and then I'll come and do the final bit, which is the ground area. So the next area that I'm going to work is this ground area. And when I'm working this, I've chosen to work it slightly differently to the ones that I've done before. I've chosen to do that, although it's all shown as half pin half, I don't show any extra twists. I've chosen to do at the end of the second stitch an extra twist. So that effectively means that the ground has a double twist on it. So those areas will all have 2 twists on them. So that means that when we're going into that area, like the pairs that are coming in here, those pairs should have 2 twists on them, not 1 as we're used to. So let me set the first one up and I'll work that little diagonal. So first of all of the pairs that are coming out, so there are all of them, I said there's only 4 of them, 1, 2, 3, 4, they need 2 twists on them. So there's 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay, so I'm going to hang a pair over there, and it's a plain pair. So it's not honeycomb, it's not half stitch and an extra twist, pin, half an extra twist. It's half stitch, pin, half stitch, and an extra twist, and I can take that out straight away. It makes it feel less flowery because it will pull the holes tighter and make them smaller. So half stitch, pin, half stitch, extra twist. Okay, so it still works as a pair, still comes through as a pair. Half stitch, pin, half stitch, extra twist on both. Half stitch, pin, half stitch, extra twist on both. Okay, so the next thing I've got to do, so the ground that's here then goes into a diamond, which is a half stitch diamond, which we've not done before, but we've done diamonds and it works in the same way. So we first need to complete the whole of this little section. This section is set up exactly as the previous pattern. So I'm going to have 2 passives. I'm going to do them 2 coloured passives and then 1 edge pair. Exactly as before, we're going to put pin in the work to hang 2 coloured or contrast footside passives on. 1, 2, and they're going to be side by side. Just make them a bit. And then we're going to need another pair just outside the work. So I'm going to put that at the edge and just below. Tip that out very, very slightly. So the pins on this side of the lace, I will tip out very, very slightly. You can see there's a difference between that pin and that pin, and I'm going to do the rest of them on this side that way to try and stop the lace rising. So through 2 pairs in cloth stitch, footside passives. I'm going to choose to twist twice, cloth stitch, 2 twists. The holes that you create on the foot side, if you were mounting your lace, would be used to sew into. So it makes sense to have them as big as you can. I think I forgot to put to prick a pinhole there. That's why that was hard to go in. So come back through the 2 contrasts. My ground then has 2 twists on it. So I need to add 2 twists and then half, pin, half, and an extra twist, and then carry on down that diagonal. Half stitch, pin, half stitch. Oh, and I forgot my extra twist. Half, pin, half, extra twist. Okay, then back to the top. So exactly as before. Two twists, 2 twists, pin in. Okay, tension it up and come back through 2. 1, 2. Ground has 2 twists on. Oops. Do that again. So 1. That one's twisted. 2 twists because the ground has 2 twists. Half, in, half, and an extra twist, half, and half, an extra twist. Okay. Don't forget to undo your temporary pins. So the one that's got the 2 passes on, we will take the pin out and loop it back, hold it back, and the one at the edge we will take out and pull back, which will be, this time it'll be that one that we pull back. So remembering not to pull it too tight, so that it does hold as near possible to a natural look on that edge. So I have got a little more ground to do here. 1 more pin, 2 more edge stitches. But just to mention, you are then going into a half stitch diamond, worked exactly the same way as a cloth stitch. Doesn't matter here about too much about using too much on one thread, so just have 2 twists on the edge, 1 from the stitch, 1 extra. Only thing to watch is when you're coming out of that area, remember to add an extra twist, because the ground that it's going into is a double twist ground. So you only need to twist once going in, but coming out, twist twice. So on the cloth little block, you would do 1 twist on it. So the only bit now that I'm going to come back to is just getting around the corner. So I'm now getting into the corner of my lace. Everything looks normal on the pricking, in terms of there's a block there, just like we're used to. The weaving lines are in exactly the same direction as normal. Our coronet fan starts in exactly the same way. However, what it's got is it's got an extra twiddle to it, an extra row, and that's because that's too big a space not to connect in some way with the rest of the lace. So in terms of the working diagram, this block is worked exactly as normal. Cover the pin as normal. 1 pair from the end goes up and becomes the work of the fan, just as normal. However, when we get to this point, we also need to work through, because the pins moved from there to there, we also need to work through 1 pair in cloth and twist from there. And then we carry on the fan as normal. So the only very slight and subtle difference is the worker for the fan here comes as a passive. Sorry, it was a passive and it becomes a worker for the fan. No problem with that. However, when it's here, when it's done this corner, it actually becomes the worker for the next cloth block. You will need to just watch initially the tensioning on that passive pair, just to check that it doesn't fall away from the edge. But otherwise, everything is exactly as we had before, and that change is a very, very subtle change in the work. So I'm not going to, because it's exactly what we've seen before, I'm not going to show you that bit on the pillow. I'm just going to carry on with my lace, and I'll come back to you when I'm nearing the end of the piece of lace. So on my pillow, you can see that I've got a bobbin that's running out of thread. Probably will happen on this pattern because it uses quite a lot of thread in places, but it's really hard to judge where you do have some and where you don't. So there's loads still on that one, but there's not a lot on that one, and that's because some of the pairs are being used as workers. So the easiest thing to do initially is to do make a mistake deliberately and swap what is a worker with a passive. So I always do that against a pin if I can, because then it holds the change that I'm going to do, and I'm going to do it on the way into the pin rather than the way out of the pin. So literally I'm going to swap it. When I get to this point here, I'm going to put an extra same move on it, twist twice, and put the pin in. And what I've effectively done by doing that is I've got myself a new worker, and I've swapped that to a passive. And although at the moment it's pulling very strangely, once I've gone past it, actually, you can't see it. Pull that in, and let me close up. Can't see any different to normal, and you won't want to take out the pins. So that's a really easy way to swap a pair that's running out. But the trick is do it as early on as you can. Next, I'm going to show you how to add thread to a passive, because it's better if you can to add to a passive. We're going to have to add on a worker in this pattern almost certainly too. So this bobbin has very little thread on it. So I need to add some thread to that bobbin. Now obviously I don't just tie a knot and work that. What I do is I run 2 threads together, but we really need to minimize the amount of time those 2 threads are together for. When I was taught bench, it was provided you've gone through something 4 times in cloth stitch, and where possible I will only change in cloth stitch, then your work is secure. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the thread that's already on this bobbin off and just leave it down here for a minute. I'm going to add some new thread onto this bobbin, and then I'll come back and show you what I'm going to do next. So I'm hoping I've added enough thread now to that bobbin. So the first thing I do is I tie a slip knot on the new end of thread. Do that. It's always so easy when you do it off camera. Okay, little slip knot, put a pin in and hold that somewhere above the work. Okay, and then I'm going to lay that so that it lays more or less where I want it to come out of the work, which is at that point. So what I'm then going to do is I'm going to wind the 2 threads together. My pillow's not quite big enough for me to show you the first bit, but literally I'm going to hold the 2 threads together, and then I'm going to so I can do this, wind together. Okay, and then do the slip, well, the hitch at the top of the bobbin. So yes, there are 2 threads that are going to run together for a bit. So I'm going to work 4 rows through this pair, and then I will come back. And by a row, I mean one direction. So let me do those 4 rows and then come back to you. So I've now worked through the new pair 4 times. So I'm going to untwist a hitch and twist back with just 1 thread on it. So the new bobbin thread. Caught up at the moment. Okay, so I'm going to wind up with just the new thread. And you will notice that I did this change long before I'd actually got to the point where there was no thread on it. So it is about managing it and being able to change threads where you want them to be. So hitch on the bobbin. Let's make sure the threads are untwisted, and then just throw that to the back of the pillow. Although it seems really early to do that, and you think everything's going to fall apart, provided for now you leave the pin at the top that's secure in the top, then you're fine till the work is well established. So for now, that's a passive change in a cloth area. What I will do next, when you see me, I'll wait for one of my worker pairs to run out. Obviously, because I've got a coloured worker pair, I have no choice. I can't manipulate it at all. I've got to do a change on the worker. But again, our plan were to do that well in advance of it actually running out and having to do it somewhere that's more visible rather than invisible. So next time you see my pillow, one of these darker pairs will have run out. So I'm getting quite near the end of my piece, but looking at my worker bobbins, which are the ones that have got the are going to be the most hungry in terms of thread. Well, I think bobbins here are going to be okay in terms of getting me to the end. The bobbins here may or may not do, and this one has got slightly less thread on it. So I said I'd do a change in worker. So I'm not going to do that change on the first row, and I've deliberately avoided those rows because I need to make sure I am going through ideally 4 rather than 3 pairs, and that's a bit difficult on those smaller rows. So let me first of all work the first the joining row. Okay, just try to put the pin in. Okay, and then work the first stitch. And never, when I'm changing a thread, change it at the end of a row if I can avoid it. So I think this the red colour bobbin is the one that's going to be more likely to lose to run out of thread. So let me go away, do exactly what I did before in terms of winding more thread onto the bobbin. So I'll do that off camera. So on this one, I've done exactly what I said. I've added some more thread onto the bobbin, and I'm going to put my pin this time with my extra thread just over here. So I just run it off the pricking area. Want it that way so that it actually goes over to that side more naturally rather than coming down. And I'm going to be able to take that pin out very quickly. So let me work through my 3 or 4 stitches. That's 2, 3, 4. 4 gets me just through the middle where we did a change last time, so I'm going to go through 1 more. Okay, and then I'm going to undo the hitch on the bobbin, untwist the thread, which is always the worst part of it. Okay, and then tighten that back up to a normal length. And I've done this when I've got plenty of time to secure. I'm going to then put that thread to the back of the pillow, and then I'm going to carry on weaving. So that's fine there. That's got me to where I need to be. Work back. And then work across as normal to the other side. And put the pin in. Now, because I've now done an extra row, if I were to take that pin out, I wouldn't be able to pull that back far enough. So I'm now safe to take that pin out and carry on with my work. So I'm just going to carry on with it until I get to the end now. So I'm now at that point with my lace where I've gone. I know you can't see it all on screen, but I've done 3 corners. So I've now got lace that is coming back onto the pricking, and I need to be able to join that lace ultimately start to finish. So what I need to do is I need to do some repinning of the lace. In terms of where I need to repin, we just move the lace out of the way for a bit. We are going to sew in ultimately along this edge. So pairs travel backwards and forwards. There's a worker, so actually we need to be able to pin on both sides of that trail. I will put that first fan in probably as well, even though I don't necessarily need all of it. And I need to put some ground pins in and some edge pins in. Now, the cloth areas are quite stable and probably won't shrunk an awful lot, but the ground area may well have done. So when you're repinning, you need to be quite careful about repinning to pin evenly. So first one is in. Okay, I won't be lifting them all up to see. You can see the bottom one, I am having to stretch it a little bit to go in, but really what we should be doing is we should be pinning either side. So one there. One there. So that will stretch it slightly, but keep it any stretches in line. So I'm going to carefully go through what I'm doing, and I'll come back to this when I've pinned everything that I'm going to pin and I've pushed all the pins down. It will just take a bit of time to do, and it is worthwhile getting it right. You can see that moved when I pushed that one in. So did that one, or it felt like it did. So let me carry on working this, and then I'll come back to the video when I've done everything I'm going to do. So I've now pinned everything that I think I need to. Had to pull the ground stitches out of it, and you can see at the bottom it's moved quite a bit. I can still move them back to where they would be. You don't normally see your lace shape shrinking against a pricking unless you're doing something like this, and it does depend on your tension. So now I can go in with my pin pusher and push all those pins safely down. And I'm going to cover that up and carry on working right to the end, where I will then look at joining. One of the things I forgot to say earlier when I was putting in the pins was about magic threads. So if you've used magic threads on your starting point, be very, very careful when you come to pin your lace down. What you want to do is to not pull the magic threads too much in an individual pin, either so that you pull out the magic thread, or that pulling the magic thread distorts the loop that you've got. So be really careful with magic threads. So I've been doing something on my pillow as I've been working along, and I've not actually shown you what I'm doing. So what I've got is I've got two cover cloths. So you might have seen it on my pillow, but what I'm doing most of the time is I'm covering with a second cover cloth most of the work that I've already done, and then I'm using a couple of my lace pins to pop that down securely. That's protecting the lace that I've already worked. I'm going to do the same at the bottom, so I'll leave myself plenty of space. So I've left myself, I can go all the way around there. The direction that I'm working in always sits on top when I do this. So this means that none of my bobbins are going to catch on the lace that's below it, or anything like that. So it's really helpful to have multiple cover cloths, especially in a situation like this. I don't need one above the lace because I'm not doing anything there that's going to get caught on it or anything else. So I've kept moving those around as I've been working around my pillow. So I've now finished the lacing part. I've done all the stitches that I need to on my lace. So I'm next going to have to join the two ends together, much like we did on pattern 8, which is the insertion pattern, which is the only other pattern so far that we've done where we've joined end to end. However, on that pattern we did push some pins down first, because we were working back on ourselves, and we need to do something very similar here. What I need to be able to do is to get my crochet hook and be able to maneuver it, and I can't while all of those pins are standing up, but I still need those pins in the lace to hold the loops that are there at the pinholes. If I take them out, then I will no doubt pull those loops out. So what I need to do is I need to push down some pins. I'm just going to make sure that the last row that's standing, I don't push down, because I need those to be free. Putting a pin down will trap the thread and stop it moving at that last point. So off camera, let me push some pins down. I'm not going to push all of the pins down, just a couple of rows back, in the same way that I've got pins in there. So I'll do that off camera. So I have pushed pins down now. So the ones that are a couple of rows back, so 4 rows or 5 rows back, I've pushed them right down. They might not be quite as fully against the pillow, but they're down. I'm not going to go work over them as such, so it doesn't matter that they're not fully down, because I'm not going to be catching threads over them. The last row of pins I've left standing. So what I'm now going to do is to do a load of sewings with my crochet hook. So the pairs that are coming from the fan, the diamond, and from something caught, this section of the ground, in fact all the way down to the pair that would go in there, are all going to sew into cloth stitch, which is going to leave us with 4 pairs that we need to treat differently, because of the footside edge, and that's it. So we can get rid of most of our pairs nice and easily. So let me do a couple of sewings to show you where I start, and then I'll do the rest off camera. So the first one I'm going to do is on the top. So I am going to do both sides at the top. So let me take both pairs of bobbins out. So before I go any further, I'm just going to check. Yes, it's right. It's got 1 twist on it. Yes, it's right. It's got 1 twist on it. But because I'm sewing, I'm going to put another twist on both of them. The sewing can sometimes undo that twist. Next thing I'm going to do is to take the pin out of the top hole. And I am going to sew these one at a time. So crochet hook in the hole, not going through the pricking, and then I'm catching one of the bobbins on the right hand side, and I'm going to maneuver my crochet hook, and this first one is quite tight, and I've got through the hole. So I've got my loop, and I'm going to pass the other bobbin through that loop. Okay, so that's pair number 1. So I am temporarily going to put the pin back in the hole. Okay, and then I'm going to move the bobbins out to one side, and it's quite easy for me to identify those bobbins because they're a different coloured worker. So I'm going to leave those bobbins over there, and I'm now going to take the pin out again, and I'm going to sew into the hole that's left. So putting the pin back gives me that hole again. So I'm going to take the first of the 2 threads from the next pinhole. You see, I do need that space to be able to manipulate my crochet hook to the back of the pillow, the loop, and then carefully pull that loop through. It might resist us a bit like that one did, Right, so I have got a loop coming through, but I had to let it go to get it through. Okay, and then put the other bobbin of the pear through the loop that's there. Okay, so you can see it is catching over all the pins as I'm moving threads around. And part of my job at this moment is to do those untwists, so I can see it's caught around that pin. It's the only pin it's caught around. Okay, so I'm now going to put that pin back in the hole. So back, finding a loop and into the hole, which is proving a bit tricky at the moment. Let me try again, lift it back. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the one that's on this side back into, I've got them on stitch holders and out of my way, keeping them all in order. That's really important that when you're sewing, you are checking the order of everything all the time. And then I'm going to start going down this diagonal row. So next pin out. I'm going to put 2 twists on because sewing can undo one. I'm going to go through the pinhole, catch hold of the loop. I turn back. Oops, that didn't work. Through. Back of the pillow and gently ease it through. Sometimes it does flick and you do have to then take your crochet hook out. So nice big loop, hold it with my finger so it doesn't twist, put the other bobbin of the pear through. So I'm going to do that and put my pins back in as I'm doing it along both diagonals that are in my my lace. I can find the pinhole. I'm taking my hand, sorry, I'm taking the bobbin to the back to try and give me a bigger pinhole, or to enlarge the pinhole. So that's 2 done. I'm going to do the rest off camera and then I'll come back and I'll do nothing. So all the pears are now sewn into the trail. So I'm now at the top with my 2 pairs of the contrast colour that I've sewn in. I'm going to put one side, that side to come back to. So I'm going to start off knotting. So top, I'm going to do a reef knot. And being very careful to get them right up against the pin. Another reason for pushing pins down at this point means I can relatively safely knot those without catching on pins. So that's got a reef knot on it. So I'm now going to single knot and then double knot, making sure that this bobbin, my red bobbin with the contrast thread on it, travels down the diagonal. So on a single it will, right up against the pin. A reef knot, making sure I've got the right bobbins as I do this. So first half of the reef knot up against the pin, second half of the reef knot up against the pin, and swap the pairs so that the red bobbin travels down the diagonal. So next pair along, single up against the pin, reef up against the pin first time, up against the pin for a second time, and swap. So the contrast is travelling down the diagonal. It's quite good that you've got a contrast thread here because it does force you to easily identify that bobbin. Single up against the pin, reef knot, one against the pin, two, against the pin and swap. Okay, so I'm going to speed up the video at this point to the very last pin. Okay, I've got to the end of the row at that point. So then I'm just going to take the 2 pairs that are there and put them in between the previous pair, and again reef knot over the top. And that's all about the little tail that's there, just keeping it away from the point by keeping it one and back. Okay, so that is all the bobbins on this side, all sewn in and knotted. So what I'm going to do with those pairs is I'm going to put a pin in them for now, so that I've got an indication that they're sewn. And then I'm going to do the same on the other side, and I'll then come back. So I've zoomed in much closer to the next section. So in terms of what I'm left with here, I've got in the middle, I've got 2 passets. Now there should be 2 loops under there to sew one in each. We've got a footside pair, and we've got 1 pin for ground. Now what you will find is that some people will just knot these once they've sewn them in and leave them. I don't do that because that's quite visible afterwards. And when you've spent a long time on your work, you really want to be able to try and hide those threads. So I'm going to sew it, and then I'm going to sew it along this diagonal, and I will get rid of 1 bobbin at a time. So let me take the pin. So let me take the pin out and sew into that hole first. Crochet hook in, okay, pull the bobbin through and pin back in the hole. And you will find, no doubt, if you haven't done already, that sometimes you do catch around pins. So you get that hole back. Okay, so I am going to single knot at this point. Okay, now my twists are always that way. So I'm going to twist twice, and then I'm going to, on the bar that's there, I'm going to effectively sew it around that bar. So crochet hook underneath and through, grab when I've got through the inner of those 2 threads and pull through. I might be pulling both through at once here. If I do, that's fine. So let's just release one of those. So it's that one that I want to release, and then put the other bobbin through. Okay, and I'm going to knot. Okay, and I'm going to sew into the pinhole, into the top bit of the pinhole. So I'm going to twist once and through the center and just out and over the top. Underneath, on top, pull through, and in the hole. In, in. Okay, and knot. Okay, twist twice. I'm going to again through and knot. Okay, so I'm going to do another sewing into the pin, and this time I'm going to get rid of a pair. I'm going to leave a pair out. Okay, through, through. Check on caught on pins. That one's caught on that pin. So you've got to be really careful about that catching on pins. Pin back in. Knot. And then I'm going to leave that bobbin out. So I'm just going to wrap this single one and do a sewing with one bobbin. So sewing with one bobbin, I loop, and at that point, rather than putting a different bobbin through, I put the same bobbin through. Okay, and pull it tight. And then finally, on this pin, I'm going to go through the top. I think it's come through. Yeah. Bobbin through the loop. Watching we're not caught on any of the pins. Put the pin back in. Okay, so that is now ready to be cut off. So we've got no knot at that point in our work that is going to be visible, and we've got rid of the ends, and that's how I always get rid of ground pairs. So the next two to sew in are these two. So there should be two little loops. I'm going to lift up the worker so that I can just get a better access to the pins that are under there while I find those two loops. It's a bit harder because mine are darker threads. If you need to do any of this under a magnifier, please do so. There's the first loop, pull through, put the other bobbin through. No knotting or anything like that at this point until I've got the other one through. Checking nothing's caught on the pin. That one was caught on the pin. So let's do the second one. So the loop is through. Sorry, my ring light is just flashing for a minute. Okay, second bobbin of the pair through. Okay, so those two are now both sewn. So what I'm now going to do is I'm going to knot them. 1, 2, and knot them. And what I can do if I want to, I can do a little plait, and I can catch in to that one up and tip it out. I can sew in to hold it down for a little bit. So I'm going to sew in there, just literally stabbing through to just pull under, down. Okay. And I'm going to put another bobbin through, and then I'm going to effectively treat that as a bunch, put the others through the middle and tie over the bunch. And now that is also secure. Tied a reef knot over that. So now the only thing left to do is the foot side, what was a worker. So I'm just going to twist my pillow so I can get better access. Check you can see. Let me move you up a little bit there. Okay. So what we're going to do is that's already got 2 twists on. We're going to sew into that pair. We're going to knot once. We're going to get sew around that and do a little knot. We're going to go into there. We're effectively going to do more or less what we did in the middle of it actually, when we did the passive. So take the pin out, so into the pinhole, through, check for any loops, and there's one there. Put the pin back in the pinhole. And the pinholes here should be quite distinctive. So I'm going to do one single knot and a twist, and then I'm going to go into the bar that's at the edge and sew. So no need to take any pins out because there's no pins there. We're effectively taking this along the edge just for a little bit to secure it, knot. And then sew into the next pinhole down. So it does make the edge at this point very, very slightly thicker. That one didn't work. Go back. Ooh. Pin back in, knot. Okay, so twist and sew. See how easy those sewings are to do compared with the ones in an actual hole and knot. Okay, so after this pin, I'm going to get rid of one of the bobbins. So other one through the loop. Put the pin back in and knot. Okay, so I'm then going to take this bobbin on its own just around the bar that's there once. Should really have lengthened that. You're obviously knotting with itself, so there's nothing really to knot there. Finally, one last pin, so into that pinhole. Bobbin through the loop, which effectively forms a knot, and put the pin back in. Okay, so let's turn back. That is now all your pins sewn. So what you really need to do now is to leave this set for 24 hours. Then you can take all your inside pins out. Finally, all your outside pins. What I can do now at this point is I can cut my bobbins off long. So leave all the thread ends on there. And then when all my pins are out, what I can do is then cut over my finger. So that is all my bobbins now off the pillow. Okay, I was advised never to cut on the pillow in case something springs back under a knot, and you can actually get closer even with, I use curved scissors when I'm doing the cutting off of those, but it is easier to actually do, or more, you're less likely to pull threads and snip threads if you're doing it over the back of your hand. So that is now my lace on the pillow complete.